Arizonans are getting their final votes in for the midterm primaries today, and there are some major races we're following. Take a look at this. In the race for Senate, Republicans are deciding who will face off against Democratic Senator Mark Kelly in November. This will be a test of former President Trump's influence over the party, with Blake Masters, you see him on the left, securing President Trump's endorsement. In the race for governor, the GOP frontrunners are showcasing the deep divide between Mr. Trump and his former vice president. Former TV news anchor Kari Lake is supported by Mr. Trump, while Karen Taylor Robeson, who I'll be speaking with later in this program, has the backing of Mike Pence. Whoever wins that GOP primary is expected to face Arizona's Democratic Secretary of State Katie Hobbs for the governorship. Mr. Trump is also endorsing a candidate to fill Hobbs's seat, a job that oversees elections. State Representative Mark Fincham has a slight lead in recent polls. Now, he's admitted to being part of the crowd that marched toward the Capitol on January 6th, and he already vowed not to concede if he loses the election. For more on the Arizona primary and how the state's demographics have shifted, I'm joined now by Barbara Norrander. She's a professor at the University of Arizona's School of Government and Public Policy. Thanks for being with us today. The first thing I've got to ask you, just look directly toward your camera. There we are. Thanks for joining us. It strikes me we have a front runner here who's vowing not to concede. What does that mean?
Well, that means that there'll be controversy over the outcome, particularly if Lake does not win. She said she would sort of, which means there's going to be controversy, which could actually perhaps hurt the Republican candidate in the November election if it drags on.
I mean, that is no small detail considering where the country is right now. How have Arizona's demographics shifted in recent years that may help us understand which of these candidates have a real shot, not just at their primaries, but at winning in a general election?
So what is probably the main concern right now is the suburbs of Phoenix. So which includes Phoenix is 60% of the voters in Arizona. So the way that Maricopa County goes has a great deal of influence. So in 2020, the story was that some of the Republican suburban voters in the Phoenix area either voted for Biden or simply didn't vote in the presidential race, and that's why Biden was able to win in this that election. So the question is whether or not that was a temporary deviation by Republicans in the 2020 election, or is this a stronger trend to do better in Maricopa County and therefore also to do better statewide?
And we're just having a few technical glitches with your audio there, so apologies to our viewers. But based on that, what then are the leading issues unique to people in Arizona right now?
Well, based on geography, the border issues are something that often comes up much more in Arizona than they might elsewhere, particularly on the Republican side. So there's a discussion of finishing the border wall, using some perhaps high-tech security, prevent more undocumented immigrants from moving into the United States.
What's also interesting is Democratic Senator Kirsten Gillibrand we've watched her go from really a progressive icon in Arizona to really being called an obstacle in Washington to President Biden's agenda. Give us some insight into why you believe she may have had to shift and transform.
Well, the state of Arizona is at best purple and still probably a red state. And so she only about what's happening with the Democratic supporters, but also to try to maintain some support among Republican voters and Republican business leaders.
You know, Arizona was a major focus of former President Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election. We had numerous recounts there. They concluded President Biden won fairly, yet we have candidates still endorsing that lie that there was fraud. How are those candidates and other Republicans, or why are they fixated on that election integrity? Does that seem to be working for them?
Well, I think we'll know a little bit more after what comes out today, but it has been a concern, and there were some legislation introduced into the state legislature to tighten some of the voting rules. But again, the there are a couple of candidates who are saying they won't concede if they lose. And there has been a lot of discussion about how the vote is done by mail, how it is being done, and how it's being counted, even though the public officials have been trying very hard to get out the message about what are all the measures that prevent widespread voter fraud.
Yeah, we know you'll be watching this, and we will continue to examine this closely as folks head to the polls and tell us what's most important to them. Professor Barbara Norrander, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.